All right, welcome to this Lunch and Learn session. We're so glad that you're here today. For this, we do record these events, and all recordings of all the previous Lunch and Learns are available on the website, which is we can put the website in the chat. Can you do that, Emily, when you're ready? And so, yes, there it is, www.fsp.org, Western Washington Food System Partnership. And so today's Lunch and Learn, we're very happy to have two presenters today for this one, which is about the Whatcom Food System Plan. And we have Jensen, who is Program Specialist for the Whatcom County Health and Community Services. That's the new name for the Whatcom County Health Department, in case you didn't recognize it. And Allie is staffing the Whatcom Food System Committee. We also have Riley Sweeney, the volunteer chair of the Whatcom Food System Committee. And Riley is, his day job is communication officer with the city of Ferndale. So they're going to talk to us about the Whatcom Food System Plan and the process for creating that. And I'm so happy to see some of my Whatcom County friends here. And I think you'll be particularly interested, but really we wanted to have this topic for a Lunch and Learn because the process that Whatcom County has gone through is one that other counties are doing or may be interested in learning from. So why don't you take it away, Allie or Riley, whoever is starting. And if anybody has questions during, that come up, just put them in the chat and we'll get to them over the course of this time we have together. Thanks, Allie.
Thanks, Marty. Hey, everyone, I'm Allie. Thanks for the introduction, Marty. I am the staff person for the Whatcom County Food System Committee. And today we're going to talk about county level food system planning here in Whatcom. So hopefully you get something out of it, even if you're not here in Whatcom. Here we go. All right, a little background. Just a refresher, just so we have a shared definition of a food system. We define it as a network of people and activities connecting food production, food processing, distribution, consumption, food waste management, and all the associated inputs, influences, and policies. And here's a nifty little image that doesn't really do a web system justice, but it's what we got in 2D. So we're going to talk about food system assessment before we talk about planning, but why are some reasons we would assess the food system? Food deserts you might have heard of them, you might be really familiar with them. This is a map of food deserts in northern Washington, northwest Washington, and you can see that they take up a significant part of the census tracts within areas. Why do they exist? What are some of the issues that are happening that make them exist? Maybe you heard about dumped crops kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. There were farmers who just couldn't get their product out and they were just dumping crops. You may have heard of a labor strike. You may have heard of supply chain issues. That's also a very common thing we hear now. Or conflicting regulations within a government body. If one agency is saying one thing and the other one is saying another thing, that's not good. So that's really why we in Whatcom County started assessing the food system. So the assessment is what we call locally called a community food assessment. It's a way to understand how a food system is working or not working. It's made up of quantitative data and in-depth subject matter interviews for that qualitative data. It identifies strengths and weaknesses in the food system. It serves as a snapshot of the food system as a whole, and it does not include interventions. There's no solutions usually in a community food assessment, but more as a guide for where to focus any potential interventions or solutions or a plan, for example. I just want to, because this is a statewide, I think, or maybe even bigger than statewide call, just want to talk about different scopes of food system planning. There's hyper-local, like neighborhood level or census tract. There's county, which is what we'll mostly be talking about today. There's regional, which is like the Western Washington Food System Partnership is a regional group. There's national, there's global. So right now we're just going to talk about county. Really briefly, I'm going to talk about an example of a hyperlocal food assessment. The Foothills Food Landscape Assessment was conducted by me and a colleague and a group of people out in East Whatcom County, which is a rural area that doesn't have, it's a census designated place. There are some, but that's not any kind of town or city. And we've done a couple assessments out there specifically on food access, economic and social well-being. And it was the basis for food summits and the development of something called a food access plan. So that's like hyper local. I've also done that in some neighborhoods, specifically around food access. But again, today we're talking county. So who looks at the food system in Whatcom County? This is sort of a history, hopefully, and Marty can give me some nods or like, no, you're totally wrong on the history of this. But the first food system assessment started in 2017 by the Wazoo Extension Office in conjunction with some community partners I think it was the thing to do in the mid-aughts of let's do a community food assessment. Let's see what's going on. So they published this really cool community food assessment. It's cool because 12 years later, we still have that first one that was done and we can see how things have changed over time, maybe gotten worse, maybe gotten better. And then the conversations out of that community food assessment led to the creation of the Whatcom Food Network, which was a volunteer group of people who were really interested in food system issues and starting to see the connection between these different historically siloed bits of the food system. And they thought, let's get together and talk about them. So the Whatcom Food Network Planning Committee and then the steering committee updated the community food assessments, which I think I'm going to talk about later in this presentation, but they really held the body of work in food system planning and food system conversations in Whatcom County for a very long time. And then in sort of in the late I think they published a community food assessment. They published a community food assessment in 2017, and they thought, we've been doing this for many years. We keep publishing these great assessments, but let's start applying some interventions. Let's start making a food system plan to make a more equitable and sustainable food system. How do we do that? How do we, as a volunteer body, create a plan? It's a massive undertaking. And so through a lot of channels, the county health department dedicated some staff, me, to staffing a county advisory committee, which is called the Food System Committee, which I will talk about more. Okay, so we did that assessment. I gave the background of like what you do after an assessment. It's one thing to talk about the issues in the food system. Then we got this plan idea that the Food Network wanted to do. And we define a food system plan as a long-range planning document that is driven by community input and lays out strategic goals. That can be at any level of government or even nonprofit organization. You may have heard of food policy councils that are not housed in government that maybe have a food system plan. But for the purposes of this, it's in county government. So we knew that we wanted, or the drafters of this food system committee knew they wanted a Whatcom County focused plan that was housed within county government. It's a 10-year plan. It's a roadmap of policies and investments to help us build a more equitable, vibrant, and sustainable food system. And it has really specific goals, objectives, and actions for community and county alike to take. So the food system plan, as I mentioned, the health department decided to support a staff person to get on board with this food system planning process. And through that, we established and convened a county advisory committee, the food system committee. And Riley and maybe Marty helped write the ordinance establishing the county food system committee, which is an advisory committee to the Whatcom County Council way back in 2018. That's when I started on this work, right before the ordinance passed, which was very intimidating, it made me very nervous, but it was very exciting. And the image here just shows, we have 9 people on the food system committee. It just shows the sectors that they're from. As you can see, the Whatcom Food Network still maintains some presence on the food system committee, which is great. Marty served that role for 2 years and was really helpful in getting that off the ground, the committee off the ground. So the committee was tasked with creating and implementing a food system plan. But first, we really thought we needed to update this community food assessment. Even though in 2019, it had only been 2 years since the previous one had been published, we thought enough has changed in 2 years that we really want to make sure we have fresh assessment in order to build out a food system plan. And I am a big timeline fan, so I made this ridiculous Gantt chart that you don't have to read, but I was like, all right, here's where we're gonna get a plan. It had to be updated. There was a big pause because I work for the health department. I was reassigned to COVID duties in 2020 through 2022, which is too much time. Yeah, the food system committee was put on pause for a little bit. We were able to reconvene in 2021, and we hadn't yet published the community food assessment. So we were able to sneak in some information around what happened during COVID in that community food assessment update, which was extremely valuable. Okay, so we had this community food assessment that we published in December of 2021. And we had this kind of idea of we need to make a food system plan, and how do we do that? So we looked at the 2021 community food assessment, some other previous community food assessments. We looked at other communities' food system plans. There's some really great examples out there. And then we looked at other Whatcom County plans. We looked at the Ag Advisory Committee, or Ag Advisory, no, that's not what it's called, Agricultural Plan in Whatcom County. We looked at the Climate Action Plan in Whatcom County. We looked at the Solid and Hazardous Waste Management Plan in Whatcom County. And we determined some goals around, okay, we have these things, and then let's make some draft goals. So the committee agreed to these goals and sort of designed these goals with the help of a consultant called New Venture Advisors. And then we took these goals without any actions under them, and we took them to the community. So we put out a survey and said, what do you think of these goals? Do they resonate with you? Which ones are most important to you? What actions do we need to take to achieve these goals here in Whatcom County? And we also did a pretty robust community engagement with the help of some community partners, like the Whatcom Food Network hosted a couple of virtual and in-person engagements. We had the funds from Whatcom Community Foundation to help some focus groups for hyper-specific populations that we wanted to hear from. There was a city council member, Christina Michelle Martins, in the city of Bellingham, who hosted her own focus group, which was awesome and super helpful. And then we also had New Venture Advisors as our consultant, kind of guiding us through how do we take all that great community engagement and that great conversation and put it into a plan throughout the whole process. And they have experience in a lot of different communities, so that was really valuable to hear. So then we took all of that information that we heard in all those community engagements, and we developed a draft set of actions and objectives. And then this is a really abridged timeline, but we brought ideas back to the community. We said, here's all the actions that we heard, here's all the things that we were able to put into a plan that we think will help achieve the goal. And then we said, what do you think, community? And then we refined, we asked the general community, and we also asked some of the subject matter experts that we've been talking to for 4 years, and we refined some of those ideas. And now we're in this place where we have this draft food system plan. It's about to be confirmed by the food system committee. And then after that, we get to go and get it adopted by the Whatcom County Council, which is really, really exciting. All right. I don't see any questions, so I'll pass it over to Riley.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Riley Sweeney. Next slide. That's me. And well, that's an old picture of me, but my background is not in food policy at all. I'm a former community organizer. I work for the city of Ferndale in communications. And I got roped into this when Marty and some other people who are passionate about creating a food system plan were like, how do we turn this into government policy, right? Like what's, how do we move that along? So Marty and I helped draft the ordinance that created the committee. And then of course, I got myself appointed to the committee, and I was like, well, I'll just get it rolling. And here I am 4 years later, because that's how these things work. But while I didn't know a lot about food policy when I started, I certainly have learned a lot since then. I am very, very involved in government process, right? And that's where the wheels can come off the bus, right? So next slide. They're not going to, but that's where it could. So, translating a lot of ideas into a government document is a challenge, right? Because you have people who are very passionate about the subject. It's their work, it's their livelihood, it's the thing that they live and breathe every single day. And taking their input and turning that into something that can go and be government action takes a few steps, right? Because government process is arcane and complicated and needlessly frustrating. So what really helped throughout this process was understanding why people wanted to be involved, right? And that was true for our committee members, but it was also true for our subject matter experts, right? What are they saying? What brings them to the table? What drives them to be involved in this process? So we had some committee members who were very passionate about the subject material. We also had some committee members who wanted to show that they were advocating for progressive ideas, right? And that was a different thing than being invested in the subject material, right? And so we wanted to validate their experience, right? And let them showcase what they were doing, but also make sure that what we were putting into the plan was something that could actually be carried out, right? So that meant building in action steps across the continuum from like low-hanging fruit to medium range projects to big concepts, right? So that when it gets carried out into implementation, folks can actually like do it over the space of 10 years as opposed to like spinning their wheels for 5 and then getting their funding cut, because that is a danger with government programs. Next slide. So we throughout the process, we tried to be very focused on what's the final outcome. Like, that's a great idea. That's not a county thing, right? Like, our food system plan was not going to solve the immigration crisis. Like, not within our scope, right? We also aren't going to gut every zoning law in Whatcom County. Just not going to happen, right? So what are some actionable items that are accomplishable? And we need not just the what, but the why, right? Like, okay, we want to stop spraying Roundup on all Whatcom County streets, right? Why? We have to document a little bit about that. Is it doable? Is there cost involved, right? So you need to know not just, you know, what it is, why it's a good reason, because it's got to be defendable. You also need to be aware about who else is at the table. Throughout our process, we struggled to get farmers engaged during the growing season, and fishermen engaged in general. You know, there were some communities that it was difficult to get them involved because of their time commitments, because of where, you know, when we were meeting and how we, you know, we did lots of outreach, did lots of phone calls and emails, but people engage in different ways. One of our farm worker advocates in the area, Rosalinda, made a very good point at one of our outreach events where she said, you know, some folks are very good at engaging in the government process. They can show up at the community meeting. They have their 3-minute public statement. They read their public statement that is relevant to the subject material. And some folks don't engage at all in that way. That's not how they are able to contribute, and that's not the way that they prefer to contribute. So we made sure when we were doing some outreach that we had some events with food that were casual around a table, that were conversation with different ways to engage, stickers, visual, words, right? Because you want to elevate those unheard voices that are excluded by a traditional government process. Next slide. We had plenty of conflict along the way, and conflict is not bad, right? If nobody's disagreeing about all the material you've generated, you probably haven't dug deep enough, right? Because there's going to be something that people are going to tug a war about, and that's healthy, right? That means that the stuff matters, that it's going to make a difference. So navigating conflict as we drafted the plan was an important part of the process. Wordsmithing was incredibly important, right? How we describe the actions we want to take, how we describe the groups involved matters. And so it was important for us to build the time into it, right? So we had to actually slow down the drafting process a couple of times in rather significant ways so that we could take the time to get it right. And it's absolutely worth it. Another thing that was really helpful was when we were talking with our committee members or our subject matters, and they were disagreeing about an action item. We wanted to separate out, like, are you upset about the wording or the action item itself, right? Like, are we describing this the wrong way? Or is it like, this is a bad idea, right? And that was something that we could peel apart, like, oh, I just don't like this term because it feels very paternal, like very, or hierarchical. And it's like, oh, well, we can jettison that term. That's no problem. What about the policy item? Oh, that's fine, right? So being aware of that. Also, a plan is a compromise by definition, especially one with over 200 subject matter experts that contributed. So, make sure that I don't want to say that our plan is mediocre, because it's not, it's exemplary, but I'd rather pass a mediocre plan that can then be improved than have a perfect plan not pass, right? So, it's better to get a foothold and start the process with people working on it than have it blow up and fall apart. But again, our plan is great. Next slide. Oh, hey, there's my next bullet point. A mediocre approved plan can always be improved. A defeated plan cannot, right? Got to get it passed. So, of course, there's a Hamilton reference. Part of one of the ways we're trying to grease the skids is we've been checking in with our decision makers early and often. I've had multiple phone conversations with our county council members, letting them know where we are in the process, what's going on, what some of the conflicts are, to try and identify those things that might generate an allergic reaction from your elected officials early and often, right? So, we had a bullet point item that referenced water adjudication. And that was like a third rail, like, nope, not, we wanted to reference that, access to water is important, but adjudication was a legal hot button in Whatcom County, continues to be a legal hot button. And so we wanted to steer clear of that for our plan, right? Building momentum is important, right? Public pressure is the secret sauce that gets things passed. So as we're going along, we're maintaining communication with all of our subject matter experts, all the people who've engaged with us through these public forums to say, okay, here we are now, we're taking it to this step. Okay, we've got an open house, feel free to, sign in, write a letter of support to your county council, right? Build that snowball of public support so that it's a very clear momentum coming down the pipe. And then finally, the process is just as important as the content. And this is kind of one of those evergreen nuggets about working in government, where, the process of what we do and the story about we tell about the process of how this plan came to be often is what the elected officials will use to decide whether or not they say yes or no, regardless of what's in the plan itself, right? So was this, a secret attempt by those radical activists to get something passed? Or was this a collaborative effort with people across the spectrum contributing boots on the ground ideas, right? So the story you tell about the process matters intently. So make sure that you're clear describing how we came to this point, as well as what you're trying to propose. I think that's all the slides I have. Back to you, Allie.
All right, thanks, Riley. So I'm just going to talk briefly about some of the content in the plan, because you've heard a lot about the plan, but what's in the plan. And then I'll talk about prioritization, why it's important, or why I think it's important. Okay, so creating the objectives and actions. So I told you that we synthesized all the information from all the community engagements, and we did what Riley said. We took it through the various subject matter experts and the committee members, and we said, how does this sit? How does this sound? We refined it, and we came up with over 100 actions. I counted, and I think there's like 120 something actions, which is the most I've ever seen in a food system plan. And every one of them is good. So, and I'm not allowed to kill any darlings. So we have a lot. So a lot of feedback I've received from other county staff who have passed plans is the council's not going to read this. It's way too long. So how can we highlight some of our favorites? And I think that'll set us on the right track for implementation. Like, we can't do all 120 whatever things as soon as this gets passed. It's going to take a little bit of time. So how can we figure out which ones to start with and how do we kind of narrow down our list, at least when we're communicating things. So we have this little handy tool over here that the action steps are organized into 5 key categories, and each in the plan, each action will have a little image next to it to show what it is. So some of the things like policy solutions are a relatively low lift as far as the actions needed to make that happen. So if we go to council and we say, hey, you passed this food system plan, here's a really specific policy, we want you to pass it. That's a lot easier than, for example, a community collaboration in which we want to start a whole new network of people who are talking about commercial kitchens. Like that's a whole different lift. So we have these handy dandy key categories to show what categories each action fits in. And then we also asked both the committee and in a series of community engagements within the last month, we asked folks to prioritize or maybe highlight some of their favorite actions in the plan. And that resulted in something I'm calling the dirty dozen priorities, which are like the top 12. I know. The dirty dozen is like it's a food related thing, right? But I need Riley's help in coming up with a better idea, or maybe
A baker's dozen. An egg cart worth. We've got so many food options available.
Yeah. We'll come up with something better. But there are like 12 things that the community said, hey, these are the things I really want to highlight. And I think we have a pretty good distribution of actions from each goal area. So it's really exciting. I don't need to read all these to you. There's a draft food system plan available online with all the actions that I will pop in the chat right now. But I do want to mention a couple. So let's see where it is. Okay, this is a huge one. So even people who wrote into the public comment period and said, this is the worst plan I've ever seen, and filled out my survey that I made that was like, hey, government shouldn't have a role in any of this. Even those folks loved the idea of making space for more WSDA meat cutters and butchers, because we have huge butcher shortage, and everyone agreed. Everyone said, yes, we really need to focus on that. How can we get more butchers in our county? The waiting list for on-farm butchering is like 3 years. It's bonkers. So that's something that everyone could agree on. We know that food insecurity is really high and it continues to increase, and the coupled COVID era programs ending with inflation is making it almost impossible for a lot of families to buy food. So how can we as a county support our food bank network to increase food security among folks who are being impacted by the post-pandemic economic situation we're in? So there's just a lot of good things. I'm particularly interested in increasing the network of shared use kitchens. As I mentioned, that is not something that is going to happen overnight. That is going to be a huge undergoing, but I'm really excited to start working on it. And I'm glad it's in the top 12 baker's dozen. Okay. And then I'm going to talk about implementation. I mentioned that we did this prioritization a little bit for my own sanity to be able to help the committee carry out some of this work. The food system committee by ordinance is tasked with carrying out the actions in the plan and making sure that they happen. So not every action in the food system plan is within county purview. So how can we as a community, not just our food system committee, but the whole community, really carry out some of these activities? So we'll develop an implementation plan based on those highlights that I showed, the baker's dozen, and we'll develop some indicators of success. One of the things that came up a lot, and I think is in the top 12 actions, is creating a little more government transparency around how our food system is doing in the form of a dashboard. So that'll be great to put our indicators on that dashboard.
Elected officials love dashboards.
Yeah, dashboards are great. Yeah, it's great. It's transparency at its finest. We'll advocate for those policies. The committee will advocate for those policies that are in the plan and get the county council to pass them. We'll request resources for programs and infrastructure, and we'll really work with the community to carry out the plan, and also to develop or enhance programs and measure success. This is a living document. So if we need to shift, if something doesn't make sense, we have every right to go to the council and say, hey, we kind of want to amend this we found that this is how it works. So yeah, that's our hope. And that is, I think, the end of our presentation. Good timing.
Let's just open it up for conversation now. Any questions anybody has? And I have one. I think I missed something right along the way. Is it a 10-year plan? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And we
So-
hope it sticks around so the plan has tenure.
Ah,
I do want to mention it has to
I love
be,
your puns.
that ordinance says it has to be updated every 3 years. So while it's a 10-year plan, it will be revised and updated every 3 years.
Okay. Got some questions in the chat.
Let's go to Marianne's question. What role did New Adventure Advisors play?
Yeah, so New Venture Advisors is a pretty large consulting organization, and they have done a lot of, they've carried the community food system plans from assessment to adoption by local governments in a lot of places. In our community, we just hired them to help write the plan and do the synthesis of the plan. So we had already done the community food assessment, and I sort of acknowledged, you know, in my limited capacity, this isn't even my full-time job, sadly. How can we synthesize all this information that we're getting out of this community food assessment, and how do we move from assessment to plan? So New Venture Advisors really played that role mostly, and they've helped write the plan, write the content of the plan, and they were really helpful in framing up some of the actions in the plan with, you know, they heard from the community, we synthesized it, we did a lot of work together. I hope that answers your
Thank
question.
you. Great.
All right, and go ahead.
Food economic impact study was not done for this. No, I'm not even sure what that is, but it sounds great.
Diane asked, how is this funded initially and what is the cost long range? So initially, the only cost was Allie's staff time, which was great. But then we went to the county council and asked for funding for the consultant, which they appropriated out of the general fund just to get us rolling. And we hope that as part of passing this plan, they will continue to fund a full-time person to work on food system issues. And so that will be worked into future budgets.
I can answer this. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Was that one of your actions in the plan itself?
Well,
To
it's-
have a-
you can't have a plan without somebody to carry it out.
Go ahead.
Okay, the land trust, Whatcom Land Trust. I believe someone from the Whatcom Land Trust was a subject matter expert in definitely the community food assessment. I have a colleague who works there, and I've heard that they weren't super involved in like the actually framing up and commenting on the plan actions. But that doesn't mean that the relationship doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lot of opportunity. I mean, a lot of the things in the plan are directly related to a lot of the work the Whatcom Land Trust is doing. So thank you for that question. Consultant cost, I forgot, but it's sub 30,000.
Yeah. It was small enough that the county didn't freak out when we asked them for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Marion. I want to acknowledge that Caitlin Leck is also in the room, and she is doing something really similar in San Juan County. And so Island County would be really cool to get our like Northwest counties like all having food system plans, and then we can inform some of the regional work going on. I know that we get a lot of our produce, and we have a lot of sharing of resources between Skagit and Whatcom County, and even Island and San Juan. And like it's annoying to me that I work in specifically county government, because there's so many things I want to do that are cross county. So thanks for that comment.
I have a question, which is, how does the Whatcom plan, and maybe I'll ask it about Island as well, relate to state food system planning?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to the State Food Policy Forum.
Yes, that's what I should have said.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I'm a member. I'm finally, after years of just listening in on that group, I'm a member of that group. That's a really good question. I think there's a lot of opportunity. The state level things are just so different than county level. And there are some things in the plan that say advocate for at the state level. And I think that for me, the Food Policy Forum is the inroads to that. But I think there are some projects that like I really want to work on. There's one around expanding health insurance options for food system workers, which would include restaurant workers, farm workers, anyone, because we have really limited options for them and they can't get health insurance through their employers. And that's not going to be one county doing it. So I've talked to other counties and thinking about how we can team up and create a assessment and communication plan around something that big.
And some of the issues we're tackling appear to be state issues, but can be handled locally. So I was thinking about the fair scheduling issues. So when we talk to restaurant workers, they're really tired of right? Closing and opening the same day, right? And so they're looking for fair scheduling. You get your schedule at a regular time. It's a more reliable thing. And there's lots of fair scheduling laws. It's the sort of thing that could be handled on the state level, but the county could also pass their own fair scheduling ordinance, and that would be enforceable, right? So some of the action items are advocate for on the state level, and some of them we're like, actually, that's one that we could take local.
I have a question. In terms of the collaborative work and I think Riley, you mentioned about potential grant funding that could come through to help for the implementation of this, or Ally did on the food system plan. Will there be a concerted effort by someone, maybe the new hire at one point, to wrap their arms around everybody that is doing the work and then also be the potential resource for grant opportunities, and then have those folks work together so that the implementation plan is a concerted effort by a group rather than an organization, a particular organization or so on? What does that look like from your perspective?
I can comment on what my thoughts are. I just want to acknowledge the role that the Whatcom Food Network has played in this community for a long time as being sort of the convener and the librarian, I don't know the right word, of who is who in the system. My hope is that the Food Network will play a huge role in the implementation of this plan, just in convening those folks. Your point is great. Like, it's not going to, I've been here almost 5 years and I am meeting new people in the food system every week. And it's amazing to me. I think, how have I never heard of this person? I've been here so long. And they've been here for a really long time. So I think it will take a collective effort. And I'm really hopeful that I'm not going to put it all on the Food Network, but I am hopeful that at least through the communication channels that already exist, we will have a more robust way of getting people involved for implementation of this plan and funding. Also, the county, you do not want to fund a grant through the county. I don't know how much you know about that, but we take off so much money.
And there's so much work to be done. It cannot possibly be handled simply by the county government. A lot of our plan talks about our community partners and how to empower and organize them to help facilitate some of this happening, because the work is already being done in a lot of places. But we want to make sure that the county is helping, not getting in the way, and that everybody's kind of working in the same direction. So that's where the plan comes in. You're on mute, Cheryl.
Sorry, do you feel that if the county government could be one of those grant funders, that would help instill some ownership by the county then to continue the work in the future?
I mean, hopefully by passing the plan, it's a statement that the county is invested, finds this work valuable, and is willing to carry it forward, right? So voting yes on that plan is their declarative statement that they're gonna make this a priority, right? Because it's important work that needs to be done. In terms of the grant funding and how that's all carried out, that's all in the implementation, and that can be worked out as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
I see a question. How long did it take for county decision makers to come on board? Can you describe that process of it?
In terms of forming the committee, that was a pretty smooth process because it's an advisory committee with, it's all volunteers, aside from a little staff time from Allie, a lot of staff time from Allie, but in terms of, that was an easy ask, right? Because of course, why not? Let's make a committee, see what they come up with, right? Coming back and getting a consultant also was a pretty easy ask. It was right in the midst of the pandemic. So telling people that there's a compelling issue with people accessing food was an easy argument to make. Getting the plan passed is always the big hurdle, right? So now we've told people what we actually want to do. And, it's easy to be in support of a theoretical thing that they might like, but now that we've put it all in words, that might be a little trickier. However, with all my informal conversations with the county council members, looks good so far, knocking on wood. We did have council members come to our open house and read the documents and provide positive feedback. So I continue to remain cautiously optimistic.
Since I have so many questions, I thought I'd show myself. I'm wondering, so when you said that Allie was working on this, was at that point, was it an official advisory group of the county? Because that's what we tried to do. A group of us tried to do an island county, and for a variety of reasons that didn't happen. So we are not island county affiliated, and we like to say yet. So that was kind of behind my question too. What did it take to have Whatcom County take on an official advisory committee like this?
They needed to pass an ordinance creating the advisory committee that outlines the membership and all that.
Oh yeah, right. But
Political
was
will.
it easy to get them to say, yes, let's do it? Because we haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
I can comment on this, and maybe Riley remembers this, but the comp plan, actually, the Food Network advocated for the previous county comprehensive plan to include something around food system planning. So when we were establishing the ordinance, we were able to, or when we were writing the ordinance, we were able to reference that because the county had already done that. So it took a lot of years and a lot of groundwork to do.
Which might be where we're at now, perhaps, because although the new comp plan is coming up in 2024. So
Yeah, I think there are other ways
in there.
Actually, I think that you and I should meet with Caitlin, and Caitlin is not housed in government, and it might be really interesting to just talk about the benefits and drawbacks of being housed in government. I'm not convinced it's the right way.
Yeah, perfect. We'll do that. Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'll give you my email.
Thank you.
Sorry, Riley, you're the policy guy. You know more than I do about that, but
No, the ask for the committee went very smoothly. And that, also had to do with the makeup of our county council at that particular time. We are all subject to the political winds.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to ask Diane about this local food levy. I'm not familiar with that. Is that the soda tax or the junk food tax? There's a cool tax in King County that funds a lot of things.
Diane, do you want to unmute and just say a little more? I think maybe she can't.
Okay.
So
Well,
but chime in if you come back,
they have a
Diane.
separate levy for farms and food. Okay, so we haven't put forth a levy yet. Whatcom County recently passed a couple of levies and are pushing for another one this year. And if every ballot includes a property tax increase, there's a diminishing chance that they'll get passed. So we haven't gone that method yet, but as we're getting into implementation, if we find that we need to drastically increase the amount of funding for these projects, then I imagine that would be on the table. But that's the sort of thing that the Whatcom Food System Committee could discuss, draft, and carry forward, right? So that's why once you get the plan passed, you still need to keep that advisory body active and engaged, because they've still got a very important role to play, both in terms of making sure that the implementation happens, but also that the funding and the political will still stays active, right?
Are there other questions about the process or the plan itself? I'll just ask you, like you said, a lot of the work is going on already in some way or another. Are those things that you're planning to put first as the kind of lowest hanging fruit projects to move forward first? And what are some of those things you're most excited about kind of pushing at this point?
So I've got a few. Allie, do you have a few?
No, go for it. You go.
Okay,
I love
so
everything.
the lowest of hanging fruit for me is just better coordination between our local food banks on food reclamation. So I've pulled up to one of our local grocery stores and seen the Ferndale Food Bank truck and the Bellingham Food Bank truck both pulled up, and the drivers arguing with the grocery store manager about who was going to get the baked goods that day, right? That should never happen. And so, you know, the county, this is one of the things where having that person at the county be kind of a neutral third party could help coordinate, right? And make sure that you know, the gleaners and the grocery store reclaimers and all those are working in a smooth and equitable way for all of our food banks, right? That's low hanging fruit. That's a couple of meetings and a good schedule, right? That everybody agrees to. Some of the other stuff that we identified as low hanging fruit, the plastic bag ban, right? That was one that came up as an action item, but we passed it. So
Yeah,
check that
good
box.
point. Yeah, it's not applicable. It's already
Yes.
done.
Right. Free school lunches looks like that's on the roll on the state level, and we might not have to do anything, but that was one that came up a lot when we were talking about food access and distribution. You know, making sure that every child has a free lunch and or breakfast at their school. I mean, our schools are incredible distribution centers for food and a key, you know, fighter in hunger. So yeah, so some of these things will happen. They'll just happen without our go-ahead, which will be great, because then we can check that box and show some positive momentum, right? Because you want to each year be able to come back and say, hey, I got 10% done. I got 10% done, right? That's how you keep the funding coming in.
I think I have a couple that one is in the top 12 and then another one isn't, but I will mention it anyway. So I mentioned the kitchens. Kitchens came up in many conversations. One was for folks who want to make food for their neighbors and don't know where to make it and legitimately make it. That's a big one that I am really passionate about. But there's also all these producers, all these farmers who are making a lot of food, or fishermen. Fishermen is a conversation. I was in a meeting this morning with a bunch of fishermen who said, we really want to process our food before bringing it to our awesome dockside market. You know, how can we maybe smoke some salmon and put it in some chili oil and then sell it legitimately? Like, and where do we do it? There's very limited kitchen space in this county for what seems like the demand. So I'm really excited to convene pretty much anyone in a conversation around kitchens. And I'm doing some one-off projects, but I think if we do a better job of collectively discussing that, we're going to have more success. And perhaps the county would be willing to put some funds behind it. I know that the senior center in Bellingham, which produces all the Meals on Wheels food around the county, they are looking for a kitchen upgrade. And that's a parks building, a county parks building. So how can we collaborate across different county divisions to make to realize that? Another one is maintaining and increasing I forgot the actual language, but the SNAP distribution, the market match distribution at farmers markets, and the WIC vouchers and the senior vouchers at local farmers markets, and how the market match program is decreasing in their market match dollars this year. And so I'm really interested in making sure we keep the amount of money stable, and how can the county support that is something I'm into. Okay, Diane, I see your hand up. Do you have a question, or is that old?
Sorry, I was doing a couple things. I was multitasking. So one of the things that King did starting in, I don't know, like way back 2000s, early 2000s, is they ran a local food and farm initiative, Levy, to fund a bunch of the stuff that they're doing. And I know that King Conservation District administers a lot of the grant money that they invest in farm infrastructure. So things like buying cold storage, helping people buy refrigerated electric transportation vehicles, those kinds of things, as well as install BMPs and, you know, like protect water quality and all of those things. And they've been very successful. They also have a farmland preservation piece to it. And so they've been very effective at like stalling farmland loss and investing in the local farm economy and the local food economy. I was just wondering, you know, like long term, how you guys are going to fund this. I mean, you know, taxes, property assessments, levies are like just the third rail in a lot of counties.
Well, first step is getting somebody designated at the county to work on this full time, right? Because without that, nothing else can move forward. When you have somebody full-time working on food system issues, then they can apply for grants. And there are quite a few grants relating to all sorts of different projects. And we actually identified some of those in our plan. Like this would be an ideal project for the Recreation and Conservation Office to take on, or this could be funded through the hotel motel funds, right? So there are some revenue streams that we call out just to kind of give council members the relief that this is not going to fall all on the burden of the general fund. But to make substantive change in our food system, it will require money, right? And securing those funds is a big part of that implementation. So I don't have a firm answer for you because we don't have that solution figured out yet. You know, one of my favorite children's books is, you know, if you give a moose a muffin, right? So, you know, we've come to the council and asked for a muffin, and now we're going to come back and ask for a plate, and then we're going to ask for a napkin, right? And if you get it piece by piece, it's a little less scary than asking for the whole thing at once. So.
Are there any other questions folks have for Allie and Riley? Thank you, Diane. That thumbs up. All right. Well, let's wrap it up then. I just want to thank you all for being here and for your great questions and discussion today, and thank Riley and Allie especially for so much excellent information about the Whatcom food system planning process. And I encourage you all to look at the plan online, the draft plan. It's beautiful, so much good stuff in there, and it's pretty inspiring to see. I mean, other counties may get some good ideas from that plan, looking at that plan and what they've included. Thank you. Riley included the link there. Oh, you put in the link for the food system committee, and you can get to the draft plan that way. Also, excellent. And just as we wrap up here, I will tell you that we will have another Lunch and Learn in March, but we don't have it completely pinned down yet. So watch your inboxes for that information. We'll send it out. And also, and once again, you can see previous Lunch and Learn recordings and Q&A sheets and slides on the www.fsp.org website. All right. Well, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. Emily, you want to hit the record to stop that little part?